Hill in the gun with Hill to his right. Play action to the right. Steps up, throws over the middle. He's got Thornton. Caught it! Junior Thornton. Split. 6. Touchdown. Midway.
Smoaky.com presents the Texas High School Football Show on Sikkim 365 Radio. Brought to you by Peters Chevrolet, Bubba's 33, TFNB, your bank for life, and Texas Farm Bureau Insurance.
Hill, right side, finds a seam. Hill, 20. Hill, 10. Hill, touchdown. Midway, no flags. Midway takes the lead by more than one score. And how about the Big Uglies inside?
Now, here's David Smoak.
Welcome back. We enter week number 2. This is the Texas statewide high school football podcast. I'm David Smoak with Smoaky.com, and this show every week brought to you by Peters Chevrolet, peterscars.com in Longview, and also they have their location as well with an office in Tyler. But also Bubba's 33, they're the sponsor of our high school football pick'em. We'll announce the winner of the pick'em in, I guess, making 45 minutes or so. Today we check in with state championship pedigree. We'll hear from Carthage head coach Scott Surratt. We'll hear from North Shore head coach Jon Kay. And then historian Jolie Smith, who kind of really almost started it all when it comes to stats and more. That's become kind of the stats Bible for Texas high school football. He started back in the 1950s in the newspaper business. Spoke with him. He is, of course, amazing with what he's done. All right, so last week, we'll try to highlight a couple of the games that kind of popped. There's a few, of course. I watched that Duncanville-South Oak Cliff game. Always thought Duncanville would win that game, but it was very competitive. It was a great crowd, great atmosphere. Duncanville winning, but South Oak Cliff, who won a state championship last year, obviously very, very strong, and they're off and running as well. I thought Texas High and Jerry Sanford and his team, the Texas High Tigers beating Lone Star out of Frisco, it was a very impressive opening night for them as well. And Arlington Martin, Bob Wager, and what they did to beat Lake Travis in the opening game. That was a TV game and fun to see what they did. And Arlington Martin with a critical win. Cuero, what a win against El Campo as they roll El Campo. Of course, Ruben Owens and that great talented team at El Campo just had a very, very tough first week. Now, a couple of historical perspectives that we'll bring you each week to kind of throw up a graphic. The overall most consecutive state championships, Lake Travis won 5 in a row. Back from 2007 until 2011, I watched two of those. I watched them beat Longview one year in Waco. They had Garrett Gilbert. And then in 2011, beat Midway in the championship game 22-7. And their quarterback was a guy named Baker Mayfield. Also, then Salina, Sealy, and Fort Hancock have won 4 straight. 18 teams have won 3 consecutive state championships. Right now, currently, Austin Westlake is on a run of 3 straight with Todd Dodge. And, of course, Tony Salazar, their head coach, who was promoted when Todd Dodge retired. Their streak is active. Also, we mentioned the most state championships last week when it comes to the UIL 11-man. The most state championship wins, championships overall in 6-man football, Class 1A, Richland Springs. 9 straight, including their most recent in 2019. Strawn and Borden County have 5 each, and Strawn is on a great run right now in 6-man. Fort Hancock and Throckmorton also, of course, have had 5 state championships to their credit. This is the statewide high school football podcast, 365 Sports, brought to you by peterscars.com and also by Bubba's 33. And coming up next, we will hear from, how about 8-time state champion Scott Surratt and the Carthage Bulldogs next on 365 Sports.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears!
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Smoaky.com presents the Texas High School Football Show on 365 Sports. Brought to you by Peters Chevrolet, Bubba's 33, TFNB, your bank for life, and Texas Farm Bureau Insurance.
We're back with the Texas High School Football Statewide Podcast. David Smoak, Smoaky.com, and joined by 8-time state champion Scott Surratt of Carthage. And Scott, thank you for your time. There appears to be, at least from just me and how I've followed high school football in recent years, that there are maybe 3 or 4, 5 schools that are winning, like in your case, 8. North Shore and Jon Kay have won 4 in a short amount of time, and others as well. Is there a trend for that? Is there a reason for that trend?
Well, I don't know. I think it's, you got good coaches at all these schools. I know that. And, especially right now, since probably the COVID is people bouncing around and going to the better programs. And, you'll see the college, they're moving. If they're not happy at all, they're moving and going. And so I think that may be a little bit of it now. But, 5 or 6 years ago, we were all homegrown and we won with our Carthage kids, and but it's starting to become more and more people moving in everywhere just to be successful.
Is it almost in a way the high school version of the transfer portal?
Well, it is. I mean, we've got a couple this year that, but I know other teams we're playing has got a lot more than that. So I think it's just the society now. Is if you're average, they're not going to say and be average, and I hate. And, there's not a whole lot of loyalty to the school anymore. And, and the people in the college ranks and the people that came in and recruited you and things is what you can do for me now. And so, and I think it's a shame.
There haven't been many off seasons when you didn't have a state championship from the previous year. Last year, of course, the loss to China Spring, and they went on to win the state title. How does that affect your offseason when you don't win because the standards have been set so high with the 8 titles? What's it like when you don't win a state title?
Well, it's tough. I mean, we feel like our offseason's tough every year, and we push the kids. I got great coaches, but honestly, it was way tougher this year, and we made it tougher. And I met with the coaches after we got beaten. I said, I don't know how many we won. We won 70-something. Games, say 74 out of 75. I really don't know, and but I told the coaches reality that in our last game we were 0%, and we've got to get that off of us in a hurry. Our winning percentage is 0%, and we did. But last Friday night against Kilgore, fortunately, we played with a chip on our shoulder. That's for sure. We practiced, and it's just we have a lot of pressure here, but we wouldn't have it any other way.
Your offense has always been kind of ahead of the curve, and I love it's kind of almost a pro style, and yet you do have the spread, and yet you always have run the football very well. There was just a slight bit off last year offensively. Your quarterback was young and Connor Cuff, and it seemed like that he has turned the corner and really, really played incredibly well in the opening game. Why is he better? Just mainly because of experience in another offseason?
Yeah, typically if we have guys that's their last year or senior year playing, we've only had one that played 3 years, and that's Blake Bogenschutz, and he was very special. But this is his second year in the system and for starting on Friday night, and he's a very special player, and you'll see that throughout the season. And because he is 1,000,000% better, he did a great job in his off season not only getting his body bigger, faster, and stronger. I mean, he's mentally ready, and he has got a huge, huge arm, and he's very athletic.
How did he take not being someone that led the team to a state championship? It's not all on the quarterback, but you guys have had some special ones. You've mentioned that. How did he handle the challenge?
He's handled it very well. We talk about this in our room and the quarterback room, and it's in my office, and all the pressure's on us. I mean, everybody, I know we got beat by Liberty Hill, I guess, a few years ago, 44, 42, whatever it was. And, we give up about 500 something yards rushing, but nobody cares about the defense nowadays. It's all on the quarterback and the head coach and the play caller. And we accept that responsibility. We let those guys know, and he takes that very personal, and he's ready to go now.
20 of 24, 292 through 4 touchdowns in the opening game. Your defense has obviously been special as well, no matter what people have thought about with your passing game and running game. You're young, though. You lost a lot of people. How long do you think it takes for them to kind of maybe see the light click on for them?
It's going to take a while. I mean, we played very well the other night because we know how hard we're going to run the football, how hard we're going to play under Coach Preston and his staff, Darren Preston. But it's still going to take a while. Our defensive coaches know we're not drinking that Kool-Aid. We know we got some holes and got some guys that got to get better, and that's both offensively and defensively. But defensively, we're a little bit behind, and even though we played pretty good the other night, but we know it's a daily battle right now, and but they'll get them ready.
How hard is it for you to find non-district games?
It's extremely hard. We had 2 games going into realignment this year, and we really thought they were going to turn over a 5-team district, and we just was preparing to play, 8, 9 game schedule. We hadn't had a full schedule in a few years, and so it's really hard. We was excited when UIL turned over the realignment. It turned over 7 teams, and we only had to have 4. And luckily, that we did get 4. We did have to play a private school again, but that's all right. We got a full 10-game schedule, and we're excited about it.
When do you come up with ideas outside of when you're in the office or maybe even watching film? Could it be while you're sitting there at home just kind of trying to maybe get away from football for a little bit? Could it be when you're driving somewhere? Do you have ideas pop into your head, play calls, or just things you want to do? Is it kind of random when it does?
It really does. I mean, most of the time it's when I lay down, and I don't sleep much, but when I lay down to rest, and I used to have the lamp on all the time. It drove my wife summer crazy, and have a little notepad. But now I can do it on my phone nowadays, and just take it in my notes and just the thoughts, because some of the times that's the best thoughts when you kind of chill down, land down, and I'm not a guy that wants to script everything the Sunday of, because hopefully I have a lot of thoughts. It may be that night, and we'll put it in the next day. And, we have put plays in on Thursday if we thought it was beneficial to us. I know we put one against Midlothian Heritage in, and we ran it 4 times. It was 4 for 4. And the year we beat them 50-49 in overtime, and it was it's matched what we did. It was just a tweak, and we was very fortunate to put it in.
Carthage had a nice history, Scott, before you arrived, but they had kind of flattened out a little bit. Sleepy Reynolds, of course, had a great run, but they had flattened out a little bit. And what you've done there is as much a standard as anybody else in Texas high school football. Did you think it would click as early as it did?
Well, you could never dream it would do this, take off like this and win a championship in the second year. But I did, had a great job at Texas High. I was working with Barry over there, and I loved all 8 years. And I wasn't going to take a bad job. I had a couple of jobs I'd offered, but I didn't think it was the right situation. And I knew that we had played Carthage in 2000, 2001. I knew they had really good-looking kids and good athletes. And me growing up at Linden Kildare, we used to watch them scrimmage every year. And Jefferson, and then they played Carthage. Carthage played Dansfield every year, which is our district. So I knew they were talented all through the pipeline, all the way up. And then when we played them in 2000, 2001, that verified that. And then we watched video of them the year before when I was interested in the job, and they had some really good looking kids. And the most talented group is when we didn't win it in 2007, and we got close. But they were very talented, and that's the reason I took the job.
A little nugget, a historical nugget. You'll remember this, but 39 years ago when Dangerfield had that once-in-a-lifetime type team that gave up the 8 points. I think Carthage and perhaps Kilgore were the only ones that scored against them. Did you ever get to see that 83 Dangerfield team play?
I saw them live in color since I was at LK. So
yeah,
and we were in the district. I was playing then, so it wasn't pretty. But anyway, they beat Carthage 10-6 in Carthage, and it was on a third and like 8 or 10, and receiver ran an out and up. The corner bit on the out, and that's the only touchdown they gave up all year. And then the only other 2 points, I believe, was in the championship game when the deep snapper snapped it over the punter's head.
You know who that deep snapper was? It was actually against Kilgore in a non-district game. John Settle, who's now the head coach at Sunnyvale, was the long snapper who snapped it over the punter's head. You've created this. How hard is it to feed the beast? How hard is it to satisfy and scratch the itch of those who now have become as accustomed of winning as fan base and the passion they have in Carthage of winning state championships?
Well, first of all, it's fun, but it is tough. We have a lot of pressure, and that's what we tell them. We love the pressure. We embrace the pressure, and it's not going away as long as your program's good. And Carthage wanted. We played a lot of good things around here with great baseball, and before I got here, and still is. And you know, they were successful in a lot of things. This football was down, and they wanted really, really good football. And fortunate enough, we've been able to give it to them. But with, like you said, with that winning comes pressure, and it is tough to stay on top. And you know, everybody says that everybody's gunning out to us. That is true. You know, we're everybody's Super Bowl, and we wouldn't have that any other way. And we know we got to get ready daily and weekly, or we're in trouble.
Is your son a freshman now on the varsity?
He's not on the varsity.
Okay,
no. He's a freshman. He is the freshman quarterback, and so they.
We've discussed that before with him coming through the pipeline. Right now it's Cuff, and that's his team, but he's coming through the pipeline. What kind of head coach are you going to be for him?
I'm going to be dad, and then I'm going to be head coach. Just like I'm going to coach him like the rest of them. You know, and honestly, probably be a little tougher on him just because I think he's that talented, and you know, he's one of the ones right now at quarterback. When he misses a throw, we look back, who threw that, because he don't miss many. And so he's as accurate, you know, as I've ever been around. And so we're excited about when he gets to play. And, you know, he's here every varsity practice. He works out with us, and then he's in the film room with us every day, just like he's a starter. So we're excited when he gets to play, and hopefully when it's that time, he'll be ready to go.
Thank you, Scott. We appreciate it again for what you've done. Congratulations, and good luck the rest of the year. Appreciate your time.
I appreciate you, Smoky. As always, you are the very best.
You too, buddy. You too. Scott Surratt, 8-time state championship head coach, Carthage. This is the Texas High School Football Podcast on 365 Sports.
After my first car accident, I feared the biggest damage would be to my wallet. I expected a mountain of bills and a long, drawn-out process. But my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent was there when I needed her and helped me get back on my feet and in my car in no time. Instead of a hassle, I got reassurance and a quick recovery.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Smoaky.com presents the Texas High School Football Show on 365 Sports. Brought to you by Peters Chevrolet, Bubba's 33, TFNB, your bank for life, and Texas Farm Bureau Insurance.
every week I will try to put up a question from one of you, the viewers. We appreciate you watching us every week, the Texas High School Football Statewide podcast. This question from Matthew Postins. I've known Matthew for a long, long time. He actually sent me 3. And heck, I might use all 3 the first 3 weeks, but this is the first one. If you want to email me or you want to ask a question or want me to answer it, if you are interested, you can contact me on Twitter at David Smoak. It's Smoak, or email me. And it's simple, Smoaky at Smoaky.com, Smoaky at Smoaky.com. Smoaky, I know you traveled a bit before working in East Texas and covering schoolboy athletics. So which player and or team that you covered first captured your imagination and made you think, whoa, the game is just different here? I could go on with this question for a long, long time, and sometimes I do go on answering questions way too long. The first elite player I ever saw was the first game I ever videoed as a broadcaster. I was at KTRE Channel 9 in Lufkin, and I covered Lufkin against Nacogdoches. It's one of the longest rivalries in Texas high school football history, separated by like 20-something miles. Used to be, Lufkin dominates the series. There have been a couple of runs with Nacogdoches, but the first elite player, T.J. Turner, the late T.J. Turner. He played at Lufkin High School. He was a defensive lineman. He had committed and eventually signed with the University of Houston. He also was very good with them. That's back in the days of the Southwest Conference. Went on to play in the NFL with the Miami Dolphins. He died, and I interviewed him, did a story on him. He was also an elite state championship shot putter. T.J. Turner, that guy was different. He was also the Parade All-American, I believe Defensive Player of the Year, and I shot video of him. I got a call from what was back then Parade Magazine. Hey, can you send us a few clips of T.J. Turner? So I'm trying to cover the game, but also was able to zero in on T.J. Turner. That was the first elite blue-chip stud football player I covered. As far as many others, I've said this before, David Warren at John Tyler, who wanted to play at Florida State, played a little bit in the NFL with the Raiders, Colts, etc. Had some injuries that eventually derailed his professional career. He was the number 1 ranked player in the country, and he committed to Bobby Bowden in Florida State, and I was very fortunate that he had called me that night before and said, tomorrow morning I'm going to sign with Florida State. He was a part of that 94 John Tyler State Championship team. And then also Bobby Taylor, Longview, every sport you could imagine, track and field. He won a state championship with Longview in basketball. Blue chip player, played at Notre Dame, played a long time in the NFL with the Eagles and also Seattle. He's an incredibly successful entrepreneur, businessman. Bobby Taylor near the top. Yes, Adrian Peterson at Palestine, and there were others as well. But those are some that come to mind. Those guys were all different. But I've been fortunate. I've been very lucky to cover dozens and dozens of All-American high school football players who went on to play at various levels as well, college and also in the NFL. Special team, I really never actually covered them. I get credit for that because I've done so much with Dangerfield. The 83 Dangerfield team outscored their opponent 642-8. We've documented that before with Dennis Alexander, who's finally in the Texas High School Coaches Association Hall of Honor. That team was the greatest single-season team ever. Katy had a team that one year people thought about maybe how good they were at the highest level, and there have been a couple of others, but man, 83 Dangerfield was awfully special. Even Scott Surratt, when he was a player at Linden Kildare High School right next to Dangerfield, even mentioned how dominant they were. 14 shutouts and closed out the year with 13 consecutive shutouts. Their closest game in the playoffs, by the way, was against Robinson at 22-0 on a really cold and windy day. Here's my conversation. He started really almost everything when it comes to historical perspective of Texas high school football, Joe Lee Smith. His name is Joe Lee Smith, and I've known Joe Lee for a while. And it's been a while since we actually talked, and I leaned on him heavily back when I opened up a website of my own back in 2002. because he has been basically the Bible of stats when it comes to Texas high school football for so long. Jolie Smith now joins us on 365 Sports. When was the first time stats of a high school game kind of caught your attention?
Actually, it was in high school in the mid-1950s, and I was stringing for newspapers in East Texas, Longview, Tyler, Marshall, and so forth. So when I'd get the stats from the coach when they would allow such things back then. So that piqued my interest, being a statistician, I guess you would call me.
It's interesting you bring that up. The first thing that comes to my mind is that when I read newspaper stories today, and some newspapers are very well prepared, and they'll have box scores of how points were scored, the quarter, individuals, team stats, and there's some newspapers that don't believe in all that, and so it's crazy that of course you got a taste of that very on. When did you realize that you had maybe the memory or kept up with so much that it became what is still today the Bible of Texas high school football statistics?
Well, actually, I got interested, doing that when I was in high school, and then when I went to college up at North Texas, I was interested in area football, and then when I finally got into being a sports writer in West Texas, I thought, out at Pampa, I thought, well, I'll just get West Texas. So it was mostly an area thing. So I guess but in 1965, I decided, well, go for it. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I decided to try to do the best I could to get the correct stats and correct a lot of things that, were misleading, I think.
Well, there was no internet until forever ago. Forever after you started, actually. And so that's one thing. But you had I guess archives, newspaper. I mean, how did you start? What was the thing you relied on the most?
Well, there were two things that I started doing after I got really interested in pursuing it was going to the libraries, and of course here in Beaumont and Tyler, and actually I went to the libraries most everywhere all over the state, and so because I wish we had internet back then, and that would be my vacation. I would take a week's vacation and go do that when my wife allowed me to, and so. That was it, and then I had people from across the state that started providing a lot of local. There's someone in every community, it seems like. So I got a lot of locals who would send me stuff or ask me things, and I think getting something from a homebody is better than maybe sometimes what you get out of a newspaper.
I can't imagine the hours, but it must have been hundreds and hundreds of hours that you spent.
Well, it's true. I'm glad I wasn't I wished I was being paid by the hour back then, but but I enjoyed it, and I felt like I was doing something. I loved high school football. Probably my favorite sporting event, and I was with college football for 20-something years, but I enjoy high school football. I just enjoyed everything about it, from the coaches to the players and fans, and the whole thing.
When did you start to be thought or recognized as the voice of reason for the stats, for individual records, career, season, all that?
Well, it happened pretty quickly, and I got involved once I started. I don't know how many people have heard of or know about Bill McMurray, but Bill was with the Houston Chronicle, and he was a major high school covered major high school sporting events for the Chronicle since 1950. And so Bill started publishing a stat magazine, and I would do individuals, and he would do the teams, and or blah blah. We worked together, and I guess it started there. And thanks to Bill, allowed me to work with him, and then I started doing stuff and Texas football would pick it up, and so it was just something that happened, and I guess word got around, and so I just started getting, started making progress. Never thought about it really. I was just glad to get other people interested. There was a while here, in my opinion, that Texas high school football didn't get the coverage that it maybe in the 50s and 60s, because of the Southwest Conference and college football in Texas, and there for a while you could hardly find game statistics, but anyway, it kicked into, and I'm not taking credit for it coming back, but then when you get people that, at one point coaches didn't care. Coaches, at least in my generation in the 50s and 60s, they really didn't want to put much strength into statistics because they was afraid one player might get more attention.
Oh, yeah.
Blah, blah. You understand that. I think you played in the 60s at Randolph. Is that correct?
Well, I played in the 70s. I'm old, but I need all the years I can. But I played under Bob Mickler at San Antonio, Universal City, Randolph, and of course he was kind of a stickler for that. And guys like Delbert Kelm, the former coach at Crawford, they just really didn't believe in things like the honor roll or the players of the week and things like that. They always were so I don't know what word it is, protective of team. That so I guess a question I have for you is it still? I know that Jerry Forrest has done a lot with your site the last 2 or 3 years, and Jerry, of course, has a great site. I have one. Do you still find one on occasion, a really crazy good stat that slips through the cracks?
Oh yeah, I'm after I decided to after I decided to quit trying to do the website because it just got too much for me. I was 80 at the time, 80 years old, and I followed people and thankfully we have people like you and Jerry and a couple of others, but Jerry does so much, and he's a lot better technically than I ever dreamed about being, and so I like what he does, and it's somewhat similar to what I do, what you do, and so I decided that Jerry, actually he had a website that would match what I was trying to do. Mine was ugly because it wasn't very pretty, but it got a lot of information in it.
Do you have, out of all the golly dozens of type records, from rushing yards to touchdowns to whatever, interceptions to whatever else in between, passing yards, from Tommy Kramer to even before then to what we have now with all the crazy numbers offensively, is there one particular type stat that's always been kind of your favorite?
No, I don't. I can't think of one. The stats have gotten out of, the stats have just ballooned. Of course, they don't. Of course, there's a lot of reasons for it. I think defenses aren't as tough as they used to be, because I think and probably for good reason. They've done more to try to protect the defenseless receiver and the head, helmet to helmet stuff. As you know, when you played, that was kind of the norm.
Oh yeah.
So I think because they've kind of weakened the defenses, and now this is just my opinion. So I don't.
Well, I find also I'll get stuff every week because it's like clockwork. On Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I'll send out a mass email to all the coaches in East Texas and Central Texas, and I'll ask them to send me nominations. Some schools never respond. Some respond with like a box score, which makes it a little bit more time consuming because you got to go through certain things like what Max Preps or whoever they use, and then sometimes they'll just sit there and go. But I've seen that the defensive stats for tackles for some coaching staffs compared to others, like you have 3 guys with 25 tackles in a game, and that's just not possible. And then there's some that, like Don Hyde at La Vega, you better have had a spectacular game, and they are very, very difficult in assigning tackles, and he just won't send something in just to kind of just send it in. It's got to be, he'll do it, but it's got to be pretty special as well. Jerry, your site was great. What I loved about it is you protected the information. People couldn't come in there and I have this happen with me on occasion when people will copy and paste whatever I put up. And I've said this before. My site, Smoaky.com, which is 20 years old, there's no way it could have ever been able to be what it is at the beginning without you sharing a lot of your information. And so I wanted to thank you for that. I got into the fact that your stuff is so protected, and I like that. But I wanted you were always so kind to me on that back in, my goodness, it took months for us to put in stuff that you had been doing for 60, 70 years.
Well, I appreciate that, but to be honest with you, I never, that was the reason I did this was to bring forth, I guess, the show. Well, I'm messing this up. Anyway, I never did it for any other reason, financial or whatever. It was out there for people, to use, and that's the way it turned out. Now we have people like you and so many others, and I've worked with Max Prep some and a bunch of organizations, and I'd like to think I'm the cause from maybe the start of what we're seeing now, because the fans like it. I mean, you go to some little school out there in West Texas, and they see that one of their kids is, ran for 346 yards, and they see it in the state records. Boy, that's something.
No, you're right. Oh, it's fantastic.
So that's what it's for.
No, you're right. There's no question, and it's amazing. The stats now used to be the rushing stats were, there were some schools that passed the ball pretty well, but it was mainly the running backs, rushing yards or whatever. And now, even though the game is more wide open with the passing game, it's crazy that the rushing stats have exploded.
Well, the passing game helps.
It opens up both. But I mean, when I had a guy the other day, I had a coach at Tenaha, Terry Ward, who's back at Tenaha, sent me a young man who ran for over 400 yards in the opening game. And
wow.
Yeah, and I don't know if you'd known that yet, but I need to probably continue to send whatever I get to you. Final thing, and again, I could go on with you. I could talk with you forever. It's great to talk to Joe Lee Smith, historian. But you are a Hall of Famer. You were inducted into the Texas High School Football Hall of Fame. Absolutely, you didn't deserve that. You earned that, which is, to me, more than anything else. Yes, you deserved it, but you earned it because of all what you did. What did that mean to you when you got that call?
Well, boy, you talk about a surprise. I mean, I never dreamed such a thing would happen. But for some reason, I don't know, Eddie Joseph sponsored that, and I appreciate that. That wasn't the reason I did it, but I was honored. Hell, I went to White Oak High School, and we turned out Max McGee, who's, who scored the first touchdown in Super Bowl history, and hell, he's not in the Texas High School Football Hall of Fame, and I am. So I always use that as, a way to try to stymie the award. But I'm proud of it, and I appreciate all that. But let me say this: you tell me about Coach Ward, providing the stats. I used quite a bit of your stats in the later years, in the late 20 teams, and before I gave it up. I love getting, because sometimes it's hard to get all this stuff, and y'all are doing a good job in East Texas and Central Texas.
Well, I moved to Waco in 2010, and I had the site that was 130 or 40 programs. At least I try to keep it up, with winning year wins and losses, which you helped me with the core of that to set the foundation, the skeleton of it. And sometimes you wonder, but it's worth it. Like week one, I've already put up, players of the week, the honor roll, and all that. I'm glad I mentioned that guy, the young man from Tenaha who had a monster game. I just wanted everyone to know about the impact you had on me, on the website that I have in Smoaky.com, and also many others, and Dave Campbell's magazine, and the website that Jerry's now doing was at TexasHighSchoolFootballHistory.com. Because you're the godfather. And yes, you mentioned a couple of others that were a part of that, but you're the godfather of stats. And it is about team, but it's great because of the historical perspective as well. So you're retired. You used to go play golf quite a bit, or you just kind of chilling out now?
Well, yes, I played. I lived on, I lived down at Lake Palestine.
Oh, yeah.
Golf. And I played golf up until about 6 years ago, and I'm almost 84 now. So I quit golf when I was 77, and so I still follow high school football, and I will listen to games. I listen to games like on. Midway. I listened to your broadcast on Midway, 3 or 4 years ago when Midway was doing.
Oh man, they had the quarterback and Tanner Mordecai, and they were rolling.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd listen to them and then them in Longview.
Oh, that was one of the best games I've ever done, and I've done a few. When I was at, did games for what is legacy now, Lee, John Tyler, among some others, but that one with that Longview game. And their game with Midway, the year that was a semifinal game up at Allen, was one of the most dramatic momentum back and forth games I've ever seen. And I appreciate you. That's a compliment that you listen to what we do. Joe Lee Smith with us. What if when someone remembers you? I mean, you're around. You're still here. But if you wanted somebody to remember you for what? As whom?
Oh, just being a contributor to a sport that all Texans seem to love. I don't know if all of Texans love it, but most of us grew up with it. When we were kids, our moms worked in the concession stand, and it doesn't matter whether you're a 5A or whatever it is now, 6A school or Class A type school I attended. Seemed like the whole community was involved, and I guess it's just to be remembered for bringing forth the history of people that we maybe had even heard of. I'm just amazed that I probably have read more than 200 newspapers, especially now that on the internet, and I find stuff.
Yep.
And it's just amazing, and it may be about somebody that you've heard about or haven't heard, or that you've heard, but never knew he was a football player or a football star. I don't know how to explain it other than that.
Well, you did very well, and what you've done is just fantastic for the history, the perspective, to continue the history, to pass it along has been wonderful. The Max McGee note, I'm on the ballot committee for the Texas High School Football Hall of Fame, and I'm writing that down, and I will make sure he's on the ballot, and if he's on the ballot, he'll get in, and I'm going to make sure I take care of him next year. So how about that?
Well, I appreciate that. I should have done that myself. I don't know why I didn't.
Well, that's the thing. There's a lot. You get stuck, and then it's hard to get on there, and it's hard to get in. But I'm putting Max McGee's name on it. Next year, he will be on the ballot. I just hope that it gets in because he earned it at those great White Oak teams. Joe Lee Smith, man, it's great to hear your voice. It's great to hear you, and it's also great to know about your history and how it all began. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate having known you since 2002, and we connected. I listened to football games. I listened to you for 10 years in Tyler, and I listen to you from time to time, even though Hewitt's down a little bit now. I listen to Allen games and blah blah. So, but people like you, keep the sport alive.
Well, you helped put the breath in it, and so thank you so much for Joe Lee Smith, high school football historian, Texas High School Football Hall of Famer. This is 365 Sports, the Smoaky.com, Texas High School Football Podcast.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Smoaky.com presents the Texas High School Football Show on 365 Sports. Brought to you by Peters Chevrolet, Bubba's 33, TFNB, your bank for life, and Texas Farm Bureau Insurance.
We're now joined by North Shore head football coach, 4 state championships, Jon Kay, joins us on the Texas High School Football Weekly podcast brought to you by Smoaky.com. Man, what a journey, what a story. You shared some things with me at the beginning, and let's discuss now. You've already had an impressive win to open up the year, the standard you've set. What's it like feeding the beast that has become North Shore Mustangs football?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I think we're blessed here in our community that our parents are, they expect success, but I think they also have a understanding of defining that success. And I think what our people want to see is just kids going out there and acting the right way and working hard and trying to reach their potential. And, we're fortunate enough to be in a situation that when the kids do that, then you got a chance to be successful. And so, I think that's what we're focusing on right now is just making sure that these kids are doing the things that they need to do and trying to find ways for them to continually improve throughout the course of the year. And when we do that, then I think good things happen and the beast kind of feeds itself if we can handle those things.
You play so many games every year because you're usually playing into, late December quite a bit now as well. How much do those extra games during the playoffs help your underclassmen?
Yeah, I think the practices that those kids are able to get when you make a deep playoff run, I think to me is a difference maker, and I talk to our staff about this all the time because you're essentially getting another spring football. You're getting those practices, for your kids that are able to come and practice with the varsity. And so, it's what we talk about. It's if these kids aren't ready to go after, 18 to 20 practices extra in the winter and then a complete off season and then spring football and through summer speed and strength camp, then we've got nobody to blame but ourselves. So I think when you attack it that way and your staff attacks it that way, and you're constantly trying to develop not just the kids that are going to play on a Friday or Saturday during the playoffs, but the kids that are going to play the following year, then you truly have a chance to develop some kids a little bit faster and as they say, reload instead of rebuild.
You've made winning at the highest level look, I don't want to say easy, because you've had to have some breaks along the way. You've had to make your own breaks along the way. But did you ever expect to have a run like you've had?
No, I don't think so. I never really thought about it, but sometimes it's one of those things you reflect on, and it's just watching these kids and how many games they played and seeing it in years just in succession. I think is something that you truly don't really comprehend until maybe years down the road when you actually have a chance to slow down and look at it. So we're caught up in the grind right now. I'm really, really proud of the way our kids are competing. I'm really, really proud of the way our staff works day in and day out, and I'm not surprised that it's yielded the success that it has. But certainly, We've caught our share of breaks and probably way more than people realize. But, it's one of those things that I don't think you can ever expect.
John, I was in East Texas when John Outlaw came from Arkansas, the late John Outlaw, Sherman, and then what he did at Lufkin, and won. I was there when Pat Collins came in from Louisiana at Longview and won. And now, of course, with John King, and you know the success John's had at Longview, or others that have been from outside the state that have come into Texas and won. What was it like for you to have an opportunity to start coaching in Texas? You had mentioned to me you're from Detroit, Michigan. To be able to come into the state that really does, the commitment here is insanely good, and be able to have success.
Yeah, I mean, I'm literally living the life that I've always imagined, as a young man, and I know a lot of people don't get that opportunity, and so, that was my main goal when I was 22 years old and never stepped foot in Texas in my life until I stepped off the plane at Hobby Airport in Houston to get picked up by an assistant principal at a middle school for my first job. And, looking back at it now and being the head coach at North Shore and that assistant principal, that first year AP is now our superintendent, Dr. John Moore, and we've kind of grown through the ranks together. It's pretty dang special. And so, I came to Texas because of the commitment and that the people here understand that extracurricular activities are such an important part of the high school experience, and an opportunity to build character and build work ethic in kids that goes well beyond the classroom. And I think that's a view that's not shared throughout the country. And I'm here for a reason. I'm proud of where I'm from, but there's a reason that I'm here, and it's because of the commitment to the public education of kids and to the holistic education of kids in extracurricular activities, be it fine arts or athletics. And I think our kids show day in and day out what that can really do for them.
Do you remember the wins, or do you remember the very few losses you've had?
It's an interesting question. I think I remember both of them, but really I remember the preparation through the course of the week more than the outcome of the game. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of the approach that we've taken as a staff, and our program has taken, that the focus is on the journey and not the destination. And when you do that, that big stage kind of shrinks a little bit because it's never been about that. And so, I've just been blessed to be around a lot of great kids, a lot of great coaches, a lot of young kids that have taught me more about leadership than any class ever will. And, and I appreciate that, and I embrace it day in and day out. And I think it's those experiences that truly kind of, create your memories.
Where were you on the famous night of the Hail Mary, as far as on the sideline? Where were you at that moment when the ball was caught to win the game?
Yeah, it was one of those situations that we burned a timeout, and we kind of knew we had one last chance, and something that you practice on Thursdays, and, that we've had some chances. But, as a head coach, I took my headsets off and went and put it on the bench, and I'm just thinking to myself that regardless of the outcome of that pass, I was going to have to manage a great deal of emotion from kids and from our staff. Now whether that was going to be the agony of defeat or the thrill of victory, I had no clue. But I knew that the next moment I was going to have to manage emotion. And, I took those headsets off, and I'll never forget Jordan Revels, who's a captain at Texas State football team right now, and Tony Bradford, who's a captain at Texas Tech, just telling me, hey, we believe in the process, coach, we're good. And I sat there as a spectator like everybody else at AT&T Stadium and, watched that play go down and watched our kids execute it. And was extremely proud in the moment, but jumped back into the head coach mode of trying to manage those emotions, get people on the side. That was the first year of instant replay in a state championship game, and to hear that thunderous ovation when it was announced, and it's something that I'll never ever forget.
You've won 2 since then, 4 overall. Did that put your players in a position that they just never thought they could lose another game?
I think more than anything, it validated the work that they're putting in day in and day out. And I think that's one thing to say to them, that this is going to pay off. This is going to pay off. You can achieve great things. And, but, when you're in there in the dead heat of August and you're in there in the winter and you're running 110s and you're in mat drills, sometimes I think you need a reminder that those things can come true if you're going to put the work in. And so I think, moments like that in 2018 and the moments of state championships since has been just validation that if you put the work in, that it is possible. And we've also learned that you're not entitled to it either.
Mm-hmm.
So I think both are extremely valuable lessons. And, hopefully that's something that we'll continue to build on.
I mentioned Jon Kay, and I mentioned you as a part of what the Texas High School Coaches Association does. And again, guys that were not born and raised through Texas. And hey, that's great. The influence has been great with the ones I mentioned, including you. What's it like to be a part of the Texas High School Coaches Association Board of Directors?
Yeah, it's an unbelievable honor, I think just more than anything because you're elected by your peers. And so, it gives you, again, a validation that what you're doing is you're doing it right. And within the region and people are recognizing that, you're committed to this profession. And so this was my first coaching school this year as part of the board of directors. And what an eye-opening experience it was just to see the hands-on work of guys like Jon Kay and Joe Martin and Glenn West and now Lee Wigington and just the history that they're making right now and the strides that are being made. And, and I'm proud to be part of this renaissance of what's going on and understanding the power of diversity and the direction that this association is headed. And I think especially in this time with the things that we've gone through with social injustice and COVID and just the things that we've experienced as a society, I think the association is at the forefront of showing ways that you can adapt to make sure that you're truly representing the coaches that are coaching day to day throughout the state of Texas. And, I'm proud to be part of that and just want to play my part.
John, last question. You mentioned the commitment to football in Texas, and I remember one year when J.J. Watt was drafted out of Wisconsin by the Houston Texans. He was flying into Houston, and he looked around and he saw, as you know, these stadiums that are phenomenal, the Texas high school football stadiums, these shrines, in a way, of stadiums that are just gorgeous. And he actually thought he was looking at a college football stadium. And he asked somebody, I guess on the plane, whoever was flying him in, maybe a private jet, and they said, no, that's so-and-so high school. Can you try to explain the commitment, the passion, the atmosphere, the fans, the history, traditions, and rivalries of this great state?
It's from where I'm from, it's extremely hard to explain. And so, I come from a family of auto workers. My dad worked for Ford Motor Company for 40 years. And for me to tell him as a 22 young man with college debt that I wanted to go to Texas and be a coach, they looked at me like I was crazy right up until they came down and attended their first game. And I think that experience maybe kind of open their eyes of now I see, now I know. And, that would be my advice to anybody. Don't read about it in a book. Don't try to watch it on TV or get it on YouTube until you step into that stadium and you see the bands and you see the color guard and you see the cheerleaders and you see the passion of these communities and the commitment from these kids. You truly can't understand what it means to the state down here. And like I said, it's something that I'm in lockstep with the belief of, that sometimes you can't let academics get in the way of a kid's education. And these kids are learning lessons in hallways. They're learning lessons in the cafeteria. They're learning lessons in the locker room and on the field, regardless of what part they're playing. And I believe in that. And like I said, I know we're seeing the results of that daily. And I'm proud to be part of that. And I'll preach that to whoever will listen.
Spring this week, 1-0 after the win opening week. And 103-17 with 4 state titles. Jon Kay, North Shore High School. Coach, thanks for your time today.
Smoky, appreciate everything you do for high school football in the state. You're a legend like the other people that you mentioned. So I appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk with you.
Coming from you, man, that makes me feel great. Thank you, Jon Kay, on the Texas High School Football Podcast.
Yeah! Are y'all ready? What? Yeah! Y'all ready to play some football?
pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears!
Smoaky.com presents the Texas High School Football Show on 365 Sports. Brought to you by Peters Chevrolet, Bubba's 33, TFNB, your bank for life, and Texas Farm Bureau Insurance.
So I hope you've enjoyed today's show. North Shore's 4-time state championship head coach Jon Kay, Scott Surratt, who won 8, and Jolie Smith, a former newspaper writer and a guy that's covered so many games. I feel like I have since November of 81. It was 42 years ago when I started covering Texas high school football and television, and then radio and television, and then, of course, now what we do with 365 Sports and my high school website, Smoaky.com. Championship pedigree. Here are the top 10 games according to Jerry Forrest and pigskinprep.com. And we'll also have a few others after this. But among the top 10 games, the number on the right is the key here. For example, the lowest combined total between how teams are ranked in the index of Pigskin Prep is how a game is ranked as far as how elite it is. And we start, of course, with Geyer, opened up the year with a win, and Aledo coming off a loss to Parish Episcopal. So they don't lose very often at Aledo. They lost their opening game, so there's a game that has a lot of implications. Lovejoy in that high-flying offense that they have. Argyle, that should be special. Also, there's Hershey and Brock. Brock after a loss to open up the year as well. Westbrook and Jonesboro in Class 1A or 6-man. Crawford and Centerville, two old-school teams that will pound you in the mouth, hit you in the mouth. Two teams that have won quite a bit. Also, Malakoff, after what was a very impressive win against West Rush to start the season, they'll get Grandview. They lost their opening game to Glenrose last week. There's Fort Bend Christian, Dallas Christian. Dallas Christian has, I think, the second most overall state championships in private school, the second most behind Midland Christian. Melissa and China Spring. China Spring with their opening win against Lorena, and they look like they haven't lost much. Still got to tweak a few things. Got great quarterback play from the transfer as well, the quarterback that came in from Wimberley. And Melissa, you know they're solid. That's a heck of a nice matchup, that game at Melissa. First Baptist and also Emory Weiner School. And then there's Katy and Atascocita, two big boys in 6A at 1-0. As we dissolve to the 11 through 20 and then 21 through 30, the 11 through 20, the Marlin game. Originally scheduled for Marlin, moved to Mart and also moved to Thursday night because of the shortage of officials, which really is hurting right now high school football around the state of Texas. There's also that game, the Dallas, South Oak Cliff with that game with Duncanville. They turn around and play another rival in Lancaster this week. And then a little bit further down, Shiner, you see them the fourth from the last, the 27th game, I guess. They were beaten in their opening game. They're, of course, a defending state champion. They were beaten in the opening game, and so they'll try to bounce back against Industrial. We'll see what happens with that. Thanks to our guest again in Scott Surratt, Jon Kay, Jolie Smith. Thanks to our producer, directors, also Jacob Wilson and Jack McKenzie. And thanks to our sponsors who bring you this every single week. I'm David Smoak. This is 365 Sports and the Texas High School Football Weekly Podcast. Battle in the gun with Hill to his right. Play action to the right. Steps up, throws over the middle. He's got Thornton. Caught it! Junior Thornton. Split. 6. Touchdown. Midway.
Smoaky.com presents the Texas High School Football Show on Sikkim 365 Radio. Brought to you by Peters Chevrolet, Bubba's 33, TFNB, your bank for life, and Texas Farm Bureau Insurance.
Hill, right side, finds a seam. Hill, 20. Hill, 10. Hill, Touchdown! Midway, no flags. Midway takes the lead by more than one score. And how about the Big Uglies inside?